ourselves professionally. What I find interesting is that most of us have learned what we know about um, the business from people who we had a little disdain for and actually left their employ to start our own businesses. So most of us were trained by what I lovingly call idiots. And so there's a few things that you probably know that are just aren't so, or at least you're not thinking of all the potential that could occur if you looked outside of the box and looked back in. So I'm hopefully going to give you a little bit of a glance at what has made our company successful and allowed me to stay in it, retire with all my fingers, have enough money to comfortably not have to work ever again. Um, it takes a lot more work than most people actually realize, and hopefully I'll give you a couple nuggets as we go forward. The first one is the most important one. It's that I'm going to make money on everything I do, and I do mean that by everything. One of the things that most people do not spend enough time is thinking about how much money their time is worth. We give away free estimates, we give away free consults, we give away free designs. We're constantly, trying to show off how much we know about construction when probably 50 to 60% of the time people go with a different contractor and use what you've told them to help them get a better project without you getting any money for it. So one of the things that you can easily do to figure out what your time should be worth is to walk into a local or a franchised car dealer, one or the other, and see what they're charging. Literally, you have to bring all your problems to them, whereas in the construction business, we certainly bring our solutions to them. So this is far easier for them to take care of than it is for us. And up around my area, a local person's getting 110, 112 bucks an hour. The franchise dealerships are usually getting in the 140s, and if they're doing any body work, it could be $20 higher than that. So if you think of that dichotomy of how much you're actually hoping to charge and not get slammed for, these people are charging 50-60% more than that every day and not blinking an eye. So we need to sort of have this sort of a bold attitude that we are worth all the experience that we have in this business. Again, we're not going to try to give away any free consulting. I'm not saying you have to charge for every estimate, but draw the line how much stuff you're going to give before you start charging folks. There isn't an architect out there that draws their plans for free. So, they might get 6, 8, even 10% for a project, and we're getting 0. So there's probably some wiggle room there, I would say. And a lot of times we draw up a plan. It's not really, all that accurate, verifying the field and whatnot, but even just giving them how you might lay out something or what a wall might look like with cabinetry on it is already doing more stuff than they paid for. So if you're doing free plans and designs and can charge anything for it, you're at least moving in the right direction to prove to the client that you are in fact a professional and you're worth a little more than someone just they got out of the yellow pages or off a sign somewhere in the middle of town. And I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to show you a little bit later in the session how overtime can actually make good money for you. I know a lot of people don't allow their folks to make overtime because there's 50% premium. Well, when you take into consideration all the stuff that we provide for an employee, OT is likely more like a 5 or 8% increase, and I'll show you how that all works out. And again, when you're thinking about shortage of labor, which we have right now, if you could get 5 employees to work 7 hours of overtime, you basically have created a whole nother employee. They make more money. You're still making good money. They're not likely to leave you for somewhere else because you're not keeping them "quote unquote" busy. You got a rain day here and there. You're quite you're moving behind in the schedule. Everybody's happy when a job gets done on time. Everyone's happy when they make more money doing it. Don't feel bad about making money. Profit is not a 4-letter word. Of course, it's not a 4-letter word. There's 6 letters in it. But the point of the matter is that your first inclination is to decide which job, which person, which resource, which job source, lead source, which of those things is going to give me the best opportunity to make money today. One of the things that I decided about 20 years ago is I considered myself professional by then. Takes a little while, but I would only work for nice people. I wasn't going to work for any more a-holes. Sorry for using the almost bad word, but There are a lot of people out there that will do everything in their power not to allow you to make money and pretty much make your staff's life miserable while you work at their home. So, you want to make sure that you've got people that are going to appreciate what you bring and they're willing to pay for it. And there are lots of people out there that have been burned before and they've learned their lesson. And you'll be right there when they need them. Change orders. A lot of people dread change orders. Oh my God, I guess got to give somebody a bill to they're going to have to pay more. Oh my goodness, they're going to be so angry at me. No. Think of a change order as an opportunity to get even. If they've been really nice to you and you're making money in the project, you certainly could give change orders at a less markup than you normally do. But if they've been kind of difficult to deal with, you have every right and every opportunity to charge whatever you feel is appropriate. If they don't want to do it, they don't have to. And for you to do it for less money than you could for working for someone across the street, why would you do it less here? Are you going to do his friend across the way, his neighbor, at a lower rate as well? No, of course not. So let's make sure that once we've got somebody happy, that they end up paying for the right amount of money. Let's just call it that. And a lot of us are dealing now with supply chain issues, right? So allowances are one way that we can keep the ball moving without actually making a selection, knowing that selection we choose might find out in 3 weeks that it's not available for 3 more weeks. So by using an allowance, we're able to mark up that amount. And I suggest that allowances are always charged out at what I'll call the 80th percentile. So if you're looking at appliances or bathroom fixtures, you pick something from Kohler or Toto, not something from Mansfield or Water Source. And you use those as your allowances. And then as people take stock of how much they're investing, they can easily go down that allowance, but you don't give them the markup back. And if they go over it, you get markup on it. Now you might not get 50 or 60%, but you're going to get probably 30, and you got 60 or so on what they've already gotten in their quote unquote allowance. It allows them to look at retail prices. We don't have to be clever about hiding how much we pay for things. Here's the amount of money that you have at retail. You can find it less online, wherever else, that's your business. But I'm only going to give you back the amount of difference in the actual value. But when you pay for something more expensive, I'm going to get a markup on it. And again, my biggest fear is DIY, buy it yourself, because most clients are really good at Amazon and Wayfair and all that fun stuff, but they're not so good about getting the product shipped to them without being left out in the rain or being dropped out of the truck, or not realizing that when I say it's got to be there by Tuesday, it has to be there by Tuesday morning, not Tuesday at 5 o'clock, because the electrician's not hanging around to wait for your light to come in. So DIY in our firm, if you provide DIY, we get 30% markup on it. And the feeling is that I need to have overhead coverage, I need to have profit, and I need to be able to warranty your product. If you don't want me to warranty your product, that's one thing. But 9 times out of 10, they don't want to take the risk of an integral part of their project not having a warranty attached to it. And honestly, I get very little feedback or pushback, or they just decide, okay, you buy it. A lot of people don't like to do insurance work because the insurance companies tell you can only do 10 and 10, which actually should be 10 and 11, because 10% of 10% is 1. And it's tough to make money that way, blah, blah, blah. Well, really what you need to do is remember that every time you pick something up and put it down, it goes in the estimate. And the amount of money you charge per hour is still up for grabs. It's still up for negotiation with the insurance companies. And again, if I were to charge 10 and 10 on my subs and materials, if I could get 110% markup or 115% markup on my labor, 9 times out of 10, I'm still doing okay. So the key is to actually build up the pool of money you earn from the labor side, which again, just show them the plaque above the car dealership's service window, and you'll see that you're not ripping people off at all. A lot of people don't do any handyman work, and I'll tell you that through the 3 or 4 recessions that I've lived through, we found handyman was one of the only ways we could keep in touch with folks, make a little bit of money, and basically provide us with future leads and referrals. And again, it does do those things, and people go, well, how much do you charge per hour? You can't charge like $75 or $80 or $90 an hour for it. And the point of the matter is we charge $1.25 an hour for handyman work, but I don't charge by the hour. I charge by the solution. And when people have a sore tooth or they have oral pain, they don't wait like 3 or 4 months to go to the doctor like you would with knee pain or back pain. So thinking about these small jobs, you need to be the dentist. You need to be the person that makes the pain go away. Sometimes the pain's the spouse. Sometimes the pain is the fact that the door swings closed and whacks you on your heel. Whatever it is, some people will pay a set amount of money to make the pain go away. And that's the way you have to think about those types of projects. Number 3 on this one, I will collect costing information so I know if I make money on any particular job. And we're going to go into that in quite a bit of detail as we go through the day. But most people don't realize that job costing is probably more important to the success of a company than just making sure you fill out your bookkeeping properly to pay taxes. Job costing is, if you do 30 jobs a year, that's 30 chances for you to prove or disprove that your markup and margins are working correct and that you're going to make money at the end of the year. Most people running a small business find out from their accountant on April 14th that they owe $30,000 in taxes and they made no money. So we don't want to do that. We want to make sure we job cost every job and look at them in a far more often. Maybe I do mine weekly. We used to do mine every Friday afternoon, but certainly want to look at all jobs during progress and then look at them when they're done. We'll talk about that in a bit. One of the things that most people try to do is they figure that everybody shops by coupons and no one pays full price, so I better give discounts or I'm probably not going to get jobs. Well, you're deciding how the people want to make their purchases. My wife, she's a coupon shopper. She probably wouldn't buy something on her own if there wasn't some sort of discount involved. So if you're going to be like a jewelry store that marks things up 500% and then gives you 100% off or 80% off, whatever it turns out to be, they're still making money. They're not giving away diamonds, rubies, and bracelets. So unless you're starting out with a very high price, giving discounts will push your break-even point out further and allow you to now do work for basically for free that you still have to warranty and complete. Another thing I don't think people should do is work for cash. First of all, it sets back your professionalism level, because if someone thinks you're doing something illegal and basically taking cash, we pretty much know you're not going to send that in as a receipt for your IRS yearly filing. So they're thinking, now what else will they do? 2 other things happen if you start working for cash. People will then negotiate. Oh, so it's cash, you should be giving me a discount. My attitude is, why should I give you a discount for breaking the law? And why is that? And well, you won't be paying taxes on it. Well, I know most remodelers don't make any money anyway, so they're not paying taxes. So again, if you're working for cash, you don't have a leg to stand on when people take you to court and say, well, I paid them this much money and you've already run all the money into your back pocket instead of the company's. You really have no proof whether you've been paid or not. So it's a slippery slope. I don't want to be a judgmental or moral judge of people, but for the most part, giving discounts and working for cash allows your referrals to give that information to your future clients, and that gives them more leverage than you might ever want them to have. This fun-looking thing is a discounting chart, and I know some of you are probably sitting pretty far back from the screen, so I'll give you the Cliff Notes version of how it works. Across the top row is above the underline is the gross profit margin that you are currently producing. And the left-hand column, as it goes from 1% down to 25%, is how much you might cleverly decide to discount to see if you can get that job. Maybe you're looking to win a contest or something, and you want to work on a street where lots of cars will drive by, and see if I give someone a discount, they'll let me traipse through their house with some of my future clients and stuff. Well, let's see how it actually affects the bottom line. Let's talk about a 25% gross profit, which is about right in the middle of our screen. And the 10% discount, of course, is about halfway down. As we go across the word, the number in that red box says 66.7%. What that's saying is, if for the whole year, if I discounted my work 10%, I would literally have to do 2/3 the volume I'm currently doing just to break even, not make another penny. So if I was doing $1 million a year, I have to do $1,667,000 before I had any additional net profit than if I had not discounted and stayed at $1 million. We can also use this form as a slippage chart. So during the whole year, you have a 5% slippage because you're not paying too much attention about how jobs fail, or your pricing or your estimating system is poor. So now if you look at the 5% row and get over a 30% gross profit margin, which would be pretty decent, you'd have to do 20% more work for that year because you failed to ferret out why Murphy's getting 5% of your revenue. And again, if you listen to Remodeling Magazine going back about 10 or 15 years now, they predicted that their premise was that between 5 and 7% of every dollar taken in by a remodeling contractor ends up as slippage. And slippage can be, I cut it twice and it's still too short. Slippage could be something you forgot in the original estimate, something you didn't charge enough in a change order for, or a client that just plain old won't let you make money and you got to keep doing something over and over again until you get it right. Even though it was right, it just wasn't exactly what they thought it was going to look like. So again, some of our expectations and descriptions were not up to snuff. So you can use this chart for other purposes as well. For instance, if you wanted to take 10% off one job, you would actually go, let's say that's the 25% margin column, the 66.7%. What you'd actually do is if you're going to give a 10% discount on one job, you'd move over 10%. So you'd go from the 25% column to the 35% column, which is 25 plus 10. And you'd see that you'd have to do 40% of a job to make up for it. So if you had a $100,000 job, gave you 10% discount, I'd have to do 40% of 100%. I'd have to do a $40,000 job for free to make up for the 10% I gave away. So rarely is discounting the cleverest way to make your business grow profitably. You can grow it, but it's just a quicker way to either lose money or go out of business, to be honest with you. If you're a builder and you're building a house and you just can't sell it, I mean, you could justify it any way you want. But for us, when people ask us that said the price was too high, and by the way, that's just like saying, hello, how are you? They don't really want you to tell them how you are. It's just something that people are trained to do. They're trained to ask for discounts, or is that your best price? Did you bring a sharp pencil? All that kind of malarkey. And typically I say, well, would you like to do your own installation? Would you like to do your own demo? Would you like to do your daily cleanup? Would you like me to take out the granite countertops and put in laminate? And of course, the answers are no, 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 no. So, I mean, I always tell people, I don't know how to cut corners. You'll have to tell me which corners you want me to cut. It usually ends the conversation. So anyway, if anyone wants the discounting chart, we can certainly send it along at the end of the session. Next big key is I'm going to understand my financials. So financials are income statements, business, balance sheets, and cash flow statements. So the thing we want to do is we want to use those to help us benchmark against our professional goals that might be written in the cost of doing business survey, or it might be in some of the better magazines that we get from the National Qualified Professional and Remodeling. We can do it against our peers. Certainly if you're in a peer group like the Remodeler 20 Club, or just friends that are friendly competitors, or the most accurate one, compete against your own past. Your past is what you are. The amount of procedures and rules and stuff you follow allows you to say, well, I'm improving against what I used to do. And again, we really want to try to look at being as good as the top 25% in our industry. And again, that's pretty easily done with the cost of doing business survey. It's done for both remodelers and new builders about every 3 years at NAHB. We're going to talk about learning about the balance sheet, how it affects your ability to get loans, to be bonded, and a few other things. We're also going to learn a little bit about, hopefully you want to learn about ratios. Ratios are fabulous. You need to know what's a good ratio and what's a bad ratio. Current ratios, gross profit margins, anything that's comparable to a single number rather than a dollar amount is a hugely advantageous way to look at anything that you do. Ratios are size blind. It wouldn't matter if you were a $500,000 company or a $5 million company. Your ratios, your percentages are such that you can compare each other, even though those firms are radically different in size, shape, and manpower or woman power. So using the ratios that I keep track of 30, if you can imagine that. And I would be happy to share the 16 or 18 that I have in a spreadsheet that I use in my consulting. It's a pretty quick and easy way to look at them over time and figure out if you're getting better, getting worse, whether it's an economic thing, whether you might need some sales and training, or maybe more pointed and more rifle marketing rather than shotgun. We're going to keep track of our working capital, which is basically current assets minus current liabilities. We're also going to learn how to, we want to learn how to gussy up our balance sheet. So it makes it much more likely that a bank will loan us money or give us that line of credit that we're going to need. Remember that the best time to get to a line of credit is when you don't need one. If you get one before you need one, you're not going to look bad on paper. If you wait until you actually need to get a loan, the likelihood is you won't get a loan at all. We're going to learn about our income statement. We're going to track our gross profit margin, and we're going to try to do that at each job closeout so we can see, again, that 30 jobs completed, 30 times we get to look to see if the year end is going to look good, really better, or much worse. So looking at things in March and April and May are going to allow us to right the ship well before December 31st, which typically ends up being looked at on April 14th. Then we're going to track our net profit at least quarterly, because those dollar amounts do change by what month we pay certain bills. We're going to do an overhead budget for the year, but we're going to write it down monthly. We're going to break it down so those big months with 5 payrolls instead of 4, we've got a big down payment on our insurances, or we've got a balloon payment due to the bank. We want to make sure that we have enough cash to take care of those things. So we're going to make sure that we put our overhead expenses in on a monthly basis so we can look at those each and every month. I've never not taken a paycheck through thick and thin, recession, depression, call it what you will. I've never missed a paycheck. Again, you could never not pay your people. That would be illegal according to the Labor Standards Act. So you should, since you are a people, you also should never go without pay. So it should never come out of net profit. It should be something you are due and earned each and every pay period. And again, the most important thing you can do pretty much is figure out your break-even point. And we'll talk about that in a second. What have we done here? So break-even is defined as the point when all overhead is covered and no net profit is yet attained. It's a pretty straightforward thing. You have made no net profit, but you have paid your owner's compensation and all the other overhead expenses. So the easy to use formula is you take your overhead expenses, including your owner's comp, and divide it by your gross profit margin after slippage. So that would be your produced gross profit margin. For instance, if you had 250,000 overhead divided by a 33% gross profit margin, it would predict your break even at $750,000 in revenue. The reason why we want to know that is because that's our dead last goal we should be looking at. But without that, we're actually it's going to cost us money to stay in business. And we certainly don't want to go through a whole year and have to pay somebody for the privilege of being in business. So that's a good number to know. And thinking about the break-even point is that every dollar you take in after that, your net profit is 33 cents on a dollar. Because you've covered all your overhead, and all you're doing then is putting money into net profit. So it's a pretty exciting part of your calendar year, and hopefully it happens in October, not on December 30th. Again, our revenue targets should be matched seasonally, because where I live, you don't get much done in January, February. You only can work 6.5 hours. It's freezing cold, it snows and rains and ices up. But each of you, especially if you work maybe in a retirement community or around a lake, you have months that people really don't want you working there, and it's difficult to work around, when lots of people are in our space. So we're going to look at that on a monthly basis as well for revenue, not just expense. We're going to look at our capital, our break-even point. We're going to look for how much we want to spend on capital needs. Could be computers, could be software, could be tools, could be vehicles. Certainly, we need to make sure our marketing needs are budgeted for, and we should also include commissions as one of the costs of our jobs, not overhead. And again, we want to make sure we account for any slippage in our business because we know what's going to happen. And we need to make sure we price it out. Every job we price has slippage in mind. Some people put a fudge factor in. I'm going to give you what the fudge factor should be, and then you can decide whether this makes sense to institutionalize it in your pricing. Again, most of us, that 5% highly compensated silent partner we have, once we tell our employees that the slippage is making more than they are, They might have, and if you can reduce that, you might want to share that with folks. They'd be far more likely to be good stewards of that gross profit. So let's talk about a little bit about the financials in terms of math formulas. I know most of you probably know this, but I'm going to tell you anyway. The markup from margin, in other words, if you know the margin you're looking for, what your target is, you're going to take your margin and you're going to divide it by 1 minus the margin. So for an example of a 30% margin, which is 0.3, we're going to divide 0.3 by 1 minus 0.3. So you got 0.3 divided by 0.7, it comes out to be 0.4285. So if you wanted to mark up, create a 30% margin, you'd add 42.85% of every hard cost you can find. That would be commissions and labor burden, engineering costs, design fees, your warranty, any number of things you can throw in there, by the way, and that'll give you your sale price. You can also use a multiplicative markup, and that's simply 1 divided by 1 minus the margin. In that case, it's 1 divided by 0.7, which is 1.4285. You can see the multiplicative just puts a 1 in front of it. It's pretty straightforward. So you can do either one, either bit of the math, but the correlation between additive and multiplicative is by adding one more digit, 1, the single column, in the front of the percentage of 4285. So we're multiplying a $10,000 job would then go to $14,285. So if we also want to predict what margin might be created from a particular markup, we also have math for that. So pretty straightforward. You're going to divide the additive markup percentage. What we had before was 4285, right? Divided by the multiplicative markup, which happens to be 1 plus the additive markup. So again, if we're using 60% as our markup, what margin does that create? So it'd be 0.60 divided by 1 plus 0.60. So 60 divided by 160, or 0.375, which as a percentage is 37.5%. So 60% markup, will create a 37.5% gross profit margin before slippage. We call this the theoretical margin created. But now we've got this slippage thing, right? And I've been able to manage slippage in our company to be about 1 3/4% on average across the years for literally 30 years. And I used to tell people, all you do is pretend there's another cube of studs, for you home builders. So it's going to happen. I mean, they may not be studs going into somebody's basement to build a rec room out of it, or make a tree fort, or store some space up in a attic space, create some attic space above the garage. That's not exactly what happens. I mean, there is some theft, obviously, but it's without trying to manage it. It really is unconscious discounting. You are saying to yourself, yes, I'm going to give this 5 or 6% discount. I just can't do anything about it. Well, that's not even possible, not even close to true. So as we take our average slippage, we can do it by the job type, we can do it by the lead carpenter, we can do it by each salesperson, we can do it by the time of year. Doesn't matter. It's going to change by who's working there, what kind of job, and what kind of weather it is. And after a while, you're going to catch on to ones that need maybe a little extra boost in the slippage factor. But all we're going to do is redo our math for markup, including the slippage in it. So that 30% margin we had as a target before, let's add 5% for slippage. Now we have 0.35%. That's our new target gross profit margin, knowing that after the 5% slippage, Murphy takes his cut, we're back down to 30. Make sense? So literally we're going to take 35 and divide it by 65, which occurs at 54%. So at 54% markup, we ended up with a 35% target GPM, knowing that by the time the year is over, it's going to be at 30. So the math says to get the 5% slippage, I need to add 11% to my markup. I have to raise my price 11% to cover 5% of slippage. If I just added the 5%, I would only be covering about 2%. So know the math, know the theory, try to, not try to price yourself out of the world, but if you need a 30% margin at the end of the day, Don't live and suffer through the 5% slippage, which puts you at 25% margin and literally will cause you to have to do 20% more work that particular year to make your plans come true, to make your owner's perks and salary, all the stuff that is the reason why we are in business. Cash flow, I mean, cash is basically the business's gas. You know what happens when gas runs out in a car? Same thing happens in businesses. So we want to make sure we track when and from whom we get the money and when and to whom we give the money. We want to make sure our timing is such that we don't end up having to pay interest on late paid accounts payable bills, or we're subcontractors who no longer want to work for us. And again, we want to make sure we have enough money around to take discounts. A 2% discount in 10 days, if you intended to pay it in 30 anyway, is 36% annual rate. Anyone earning anywhere more than what, 0.015 in a savings account? And if you're willing to risk money in the stock market, you probably have made 8%, maybe even 10% so far this year, but you haven't made 32% in 10 days. And again, we want to make sure we take care of cash safely. We want to plan ahead for cash. Again, we want to make line of credit applications while we are cash rich and don't owe a lot of money to other folks. Nothing's truer than you cannot be all things to everyone. Not everyone is your client. It's certainly not your ideal client, and you are not obligated by any law that I know of to work for someone you don't like during the negotiating process of coming to a contract. You don't have to work for people. You don't have to sell a can of peas like a grocery store would. So you can choose by job type. What kind of types of job do you make the most money? Have the least opportunity for slippage to occur? Well, the client's personality. I mean, if you don't have like antennas that go crazy when you see somebody that's like certifiable and you still want to work for them, you deserve what you get, right? We want to talk about what kind of jobs are the most profitable for us, or they're at least we know there's the least slippage. Sometimes it's neighborhood. Sometimes it's demographics. We used to think that DINKs, double income, no kids, was our best demographic for clients. And again, we want to make sure we can also look at how often we close these folks. So if we're closing past clients at 80%, referrals at 60%, and internet sales at 10%, where should we spend most of our money and time? On the jobs where there's a good chance we can go from suspect to prospect to contract in a timely fashion. Again, in a good neighborhood with good client personalities, good job profitability. So we have ways of tweaking our qualifications for people that we spend the most time on with these 5 or 6 factors. And you can come up with more, and certainly you could use less. But by not using any qualifications within this realm, you are actually wasting a whole ton of money and time estimating, doing proposals and presentations with absolutely no reason to expect that to become a job or even want that to be a job. So again, if everyone's not my client, we also want to make sure that we choose jobs by our staff's capabilities. We don't really want to go to school on people's projects. Again, maybe not work for family. Certainly you don't want to work for friends at a discount, because no good turn goes unpunished. You can make a rule: we don't work for friends unless they pay full price, so that I don't have to feel like, you know, I'm actually taking a hit. I mean, if you want to just hand me $1,000 because I'm your friend, you know, would you do that? No. So why should I give you $1,000 off the cost just because you're my friend? Because basically it's the same math, right? So we're choosing to be choosy. You know, you sometimes even don't want to work for referrals. If you started out as a deck builder and 2 years later and all you're getting is referrals to do decks, and you really wanted to be a kitchen remodeler when you grow up, why should we let the client steer that ship? There are times when we need to basically cut the cord. And sometimes you're sort of through the best clients or friends of these referrers, and now they're sending just anybody, so you'll give them a free night's dinner and movie tickets. So don't fall prey to the fact that you have to work for a referral if they don't match your ideal client and job and stuff. Just tell them no. I'm sure as a child you heard no 1,000 times a year for 18 or more years. It's pretty easy to use the word no. How about I'll not go it alone, right? You're part of the National Association of Home Builders, you're part of the South Carolina Builders, and you're BIA of Central South Carolina, I think it is. So all those associations have very valuable ways to chat with other folks that are in like situations or even in similar businesses, but not actually a competitor. You got the NKBA, and there's other groups as well. And there's great trade groups. And when you're at a trade show, you certainly have an opportunity to network with folks. Again, easy way to find a mentor, someone who can, sort of, we can bounce things off them without having to pay a bill. Oftentimes they're people my age, 69 years old, who are really, we've got a lot of stuff in our brain. It would be nice to not die with it all in there. And a lot of people are very happy to help younger folks get a good footing in this business. And obviously you have actual networking groups that would help you with your finances. Remodeler 20, which is part of NAHB, there's business networks. Remodelers Advantage, there's CCN. There are a lot of little organizations out in the world that are set up to be able to help folks so they're not going alone. And again, you got your accountants, coaches, mentors, other subcontractors, all people that have either gone through the kind of things that you're going through or advise folks as a professional. I'll attend trade shows. The remodeling shows every year. There are some JLC shows around the country. They don't go to South Carolina, unfortunately. Obviously, IBS is occurring this year in Orlando in February, but right around the first week of February this year. You got local seminars like you're doing right now. Again, your marketing reach can be extended by the Rotary, Chambers of Commerce, the Lions, Kiwanis, any number of groups that allow you to take leadership positions in, or just actually go to the meetings. That'll help you get almost what I'll call free referrals. And again, use magazines. You can read them, save them, and train with them. Particularly, I like JLC, Journal Light Construction. And hopefully, if you don't know the person sitting next to you, you might be able to make a friend here today. So planning for success is obviously one of the first things you need to do. I try to plan a whole year out in November. Obviously, it changes and we have to tweak it, but we start out with what we call SMART goals: specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, and time-bound. For an example, we'd say I want to raise my margin 5% by the end of quarter 3 from its current level, and that would be specific. I've got a margin goal. It's measurable because I have a income statement. It's action-oriented because we're raising it. It's realistic because I know for a fact that in this market, if you can't raise your price 5%, then you must be very, very expensive already. And time-bound, we're saying we're doing it by September 30th. So any goal you write down that doesn't have all 5 of those things is probably more like a wish list than an actual plan. So we're going to have a specific goal for net profit, revenue, owner's comp, owner's perks, gross profit in dollars, gross profit as a margin, as a percentage. And we also want to make sure that we take care of capital purchases. That'd be trucks, software, hardware, big tools. Anything costs more than $5. You should be building a pool of money that you can use to pay for it in cash if you want to. If not, if you want to save your cash, you certainly would be able to borrow the money because you've got good-looking balance sheets. How else do I plan for success? I'm going to create a marketing plan that has some legs. So I know you all know that you can't market today and expect someone to call you tomorrow. I mean, that might happen, but it's unlikely. So 3 to 6 months ahead of when you need work is when you should have institute your marketing plan. So if you need work in February, March, if you live in Connecticut, you certainly would want to make sure you're doing your social medias and whatever else you do starting now, so that by October, November, they're pretty much ready to go in the queue and you can give them a contract and with a starting bid. And again, you want to get the buzz way before you need the work to start. And again, you want to make sure that you're using a rifle, not a shotgun. Again, we've got ideal clients, jobs, and areas, and you need to make sure you can find avenues to get that in front of those folks. We've had a newsletter for the last, 8 or 9 years. Obviously, I've just ended it, but we were sending it to every past client and every past lead that we'd send a contract to. So people that almost were clients, not necessarily just those people that had been clients. And we did friends and other sort of big shots in the association, including engineers and architects and designers, so that everyone saw, sort of what we do and kept them abreast of what was new and cool in our industry. And again, you should never, never, ever not market. no matter what the state of the economy. Because if people forget who you are, you're done. You have to start, basically from scratch. We plan for the unexpected? Absolutely. We want to make sure that we budget for a great year. We want to budget for a lesser year. I hate to use the word worse year. And we also have to have a budget for the most likely scenario. So that way there, as we look toward our better year, we can have a prioritized list of how we're going to spend that extra windfall. And we'll also have a list, if we're going toward the worst year, of those expenditures that will have to be cut, because we can't just not make money. I mean, companies are like humans. They need to have money coming in as a profit, net profit, or eventually they cease to exist. So we publicize these hit lists, both good hits and bad hits. The staff has a little bit of skin in the game to make sure these things come true. So you actually get a little more accountability, a little bit more enthusiasm, a lot better buy-in if they can see what's in it for them if things go well, and what's in it for them if things don't go so well. And again, it'll also let us know when we might need to hire, and unfortunately when we might need to do layoffs. All those things really fall right into volume. And again, I'd like to see everyone have 6 months of overhead coverage before they do any growth things or any crazy mergers, or putting in a showroom or things like that, because things can really go south fast. We're going to keep score. We're going to keep score about tons of stuff. We're going to track leads by source, leads by job type, kitchen, bath, deck. We're going to do it by address. What parts of town or towns are we doing well in? We're going to track the time it takes from our first visit to a signed contract. For instance, I could spend, 3.5, 4 months on a kitchen job between the time we first meet and come to contract. And a roofing job I can probably do in 3 days. A siding job, maybe 3 weeks. A window job, probably 4 weeks. So if you need work done and money coming in on a short term, because you've got maybe someone canceled on you, or somebody got sick that really is the only person you let do kitchen jobs, you need to find out what type of job you can get in, squeeze in a short period of time. And knowing this fact is pretty helpful in when you need to be flexible in that regard. And again, we're looking at gross profitability on every one of those items. Best source, best job, best address, quickest to the market. All those things are going to help us pick and be the most profitable we can be, given our skill set and our economy of our own local source. We're going to job cost every job you do, including labor and labor burden. I'm going to show you a labor burden sheet at the end, including obviously materials, subcontractors, design fees, engineering, architectural, all that stuff. And it includes the owner's time. I know a lot of people that do not fill out a time card because they said, I'm the owner, why should I do that? I've filled out a time card since April 1976. Each week, I don't get paid with that one. No one should ever be paid until they can justify the hours they spent doing what they spent it doing. Because you'll find out if you start filling out a time card that you're spending way too much time on the phone, going to the bank, opening your mail, playing games on your phone, or watching kiddie videos or whatever else people do, which is inappropriate at work. And if you're filling out a time card, then your time can be charged to a job that you work on. And most owners that I know that are in businesses under $1.5 million do some field work. Well, if you don't fill out a time card and charge that job with those hours, who are you going to find to work for free when you finally do put down the nail sack for permanently? And all your job costing records are useless, because they include all these free hours that are not possible unless you, as the owner, continue to do free work after you said you were going to put your nail sack down. So pay attention to how you spend your time and make sure that your job cost records are accurate. They're realistic. They're what's really happening. Because again, you want to make sure that you get to some point where you might want to start subbing out parts of these jobs. You need to know how much you could do it yourself for versus how much the sub charges, to see if it's sometimes worthwhile to just sub it out so that you can get other stuff done where you might make more money on. We're going to audit jobs in progress. I think I mentioned that we do it every Friday. We paid all our accounts payable bills on Thursday for any job invoices that were put in by Wednesday and approved by the lead carpenters. And so on Friday afternoon, we had basically all the costs that were up to Friday noon were already in the computer system. So we basically could look at the way the job was running at any time from Friday to Monday and have a pretty accurate look at what had happened already and what was yet to be costed out. So we've got your estimate inside the job costing system of the computer. You know how much you've already incurred toward that. You can pretty much see what percentage of the cost you've incurred, and that same percentage which should be about how much money you billed for on those jobs. It's called percent complete billing. And if we see that those margins are being predicted to be way lower than we want, we have at least an opportunity to right the ship. If we wait until the job is over to do our analysis, we're operating on a corpse. It's way too late to do any resuscitation whatsoever. So making sure you put your estimates into job costing in the same silos as you have in your estimates by category. That'd be like flooring, roofing, painting, and by class, materials, labor, subs, engineering, design. All those things can be looked at what I thought was going to happen versus what actually happened at the silo level. If the silo level says there's problems, maybe it's 5% is your what was I going to say, your threshold for pain. Then you look in the silo and see that, okay, in the silo, we have this, this, and this. Then you would add back, look at the actual accounts payable, bills from the subs, from the materials, look at the time cards, and you can pretty much tell who's at fault. Could be the estimator, could be the salesperson, could be the client, could be we're going to school and job. Whatever it is, you can start building into your next price all the things you learn on this job. Obviously, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. By doing jobs over and over again without looking at them to see why they failed or why they were good is also insanity. I'd like to see our overheads budgeted monthly so that we can make sure that we're just like the jobs. We want to make sure we can see bad trends occurring. We're going to look at the variance of those items quarterly. That sort of takes care of some of the fact that you might pay a bill 1 month on July 30th, and then the next month you pay it on, say, September 1st. And so in August, there was no big rent bill. You're thinking, oh, I did really good this month. The rent was a third of what it should be. No, it's because you actually, if you paid the bills on the 1st, or the 30th, the 30th, they would have all come out perfectly fine. So over a quarter, it gives you 3 months to get the payments made in approximately the same time. Doesn't make you freak out unnecessarily, although sometimes you should be freaking out. And again, we're looking at priorities of cash inflows and outflows. Who do we pay first? How do we avoid having to pay interest? And again, one thing that you should probably do is decide to take no job, do no change order for less than a particular target margin. Again, if you have a rule, you will have to consciously break it. And if you tell your staff that there's a rule, they'll probably obey it. You as the owner probably will be the only one that ever breaks it. Again, we're going to look at productivity of our leads as part of keeping score. How many dollars do they produce per year? How well are they doing against the schedules that we've set up? So we're actually going to look at the productivity within each cost category to see if maybe one lead carpenter really shouldn't be there when they're doing, say, the flooring or the painting, or more likely the sheetrocking. And again, we're going to check all these numbers against quality of output. We don't want someone going immensely fast and doing a crappy job, because eventually you'll have to repair it when it costs way much to do so, or you're going to be losing referrals. And again, referrals are basically free advertising, free marketing. They are really what we need to prioritize in our work, in our quality output. Again, as keeping score, we're going to track job type margins. Kitchens typically were our most profitable. Baths not so much so, because schedule used to be a problem. I mean, trying to do a 7-day bathroom, which we used to promise, was very difficult to do, and any little bit of a snafu usually cost us money, because we end up having to pass over the tile person we've got scheduled and do the tile ourselves, which we're capable of doing, but not at the same price. And again, margin by lead source. Who's giving us the most opportunity to make money? Is it a past client, a direct referral, a neighbor, a coworker, someone with our job signs, someone yellow pages, or is it the internet? Whatever it is, we want to make sure that we spend more time and effort on those things. Salespeople, project leaders, they should also be tracked against their ongoing margin stewardship. Client demographics not so important, but I will say that inspectors, there's 1 or 2 towns where I live where the inspectors have their own little fiefdom. And if you don't follow their rules, you're likely to have some re-inspections. And sometimes these re-inspections are 6 business days later. Try to make money when you have 2 possibilities on a small job to have an inspector give you a no-go, won't accept a photo or a video, and they put you back in the line 6 days later. Nice. So again, we want to make sure we spend more of our effort on projects that have the potential for financial success, because Murphy's still going to be there, right? But we're going to set it up so the best possible outcome is within our sights. Delegate and train your successor. I have an MBA, and one of the first things they teach you in MBA schools, one of your main jobs in life is to train your successor. It's pretty difficult to run up the managerial ladder without having someone that can do your job so that you can go on to bigger and better things and hopefully more money. So in any business, you also need to be training your successor. Even if they end up working, starting their own business, you'll still come out better for the few years that you keep them there. For job descriptions, you can actually steal those from any number of sources, but you can also buy a book from NAHB called Job Descriptions in the Construction Industry. That would give you those. There's probably 55 or 60 descriptions in there of jobs. Again, we want to train in-house for safety, as well as what your company culture is, because they might have come from a very loosey-goosey group before they came to you. You're going to use trade shows to train, seminars to train, and we want to make sure that we train folks to do things that we either give little priority for, or we don't really enjoy doing, or purposely put off until it doesn't matter anymore. Oh, that was last year. I don't have to worry about that anymore, thank goodness. Because there's a lot of people out there that are looking to show what they can do. They might be a little bored even with what they're doing now. And one of my favorite expressions is, you need to let go to grow. So delegating is one of the first things you need to master to be able to make your company larger and more diverse. So give up some of those hats. Try not to micromanage when you've given somebody what you want them to figure out. Let them figure out how. Kind of like when you were a kid, you didn't know how to climb a tree. You figured it out on the run. And sometimes you figured it out better than mom and dad. Or they probably hadn't climbed trees in a while, but the point is that you're allowing people to be judged by the final outcome, not how they got there, because oftentimes they'll actually figure out a better way to do it. Another thing we did was we required anyone out in the field that had a problem to come up with 2 possible solutions before they called in their supervisor or the boss being me or my brother. Because without that, I'd say, well, how big is the space? I'll go measure. And I go over there and look at it. Okay, so do we have matching paint? Oh, I don't know. I'll go look for some. Did the client notice it? No, I don't think so. I'll ask. It's just on and on and on. If I had all that information, I could have figured it out. And if they had all that information, they could have figured it out. So I don't want to be the answer. I want to be the question. Did you look for this? Did you think about that? Were you concerned about the client not accepting it when you were done? Do you honestly think this is good enough? Rather than, fix it, change it. So try to be the question and not the answer. Again, everyone should have an exit strategy, whether you sell your business, whether you retire and close the business down, which I've chosen to do. I mean, we want to get out alive. We want to get out, while we're still young enough to enjoy what's out there for us. And our business is pretty rough on bodies. I've had back surgery. I've broken several bones, a little arthritis in my hands. At my age, that's not so bad, but most of my buddies that had desk jobs don't have any of these issues at all. And again, realizing you can only grow your business by giving away some duties. Again, holding people accountable to written goals. They actually sign off on what they intend to do to earn that extra income, or duties or responsibilities. And again, we want to make sure we reward folks that do a good job with either pay or more time off, or flexibility in hours so they can see their kid do a concert or soccer or something. There's all sorts of ways people can be remunerated that has nothing to do with dollars. I'm going to aim high because gravity sucks. If anyone's a hunter or they've done some shooting or even thrown darts, you realize that gravity sucks. If you don't aim a little higher than your target, you're not going to get there. Gravity is the best slippage in the world, right? So Murphy is always going to be our partner. You can never get rid of him. So one of the things I would suggest is you learn to estimate in a logical manner. We used to start at 12 o'clock, work around the outside of the perimeter, the inside of that same perimeter, and then each room around that in the same order, so that there was almost no way to forget a space or a wall cavity or whatever. But I mean, there's still going to be things you forget, but at least it's unlikely that you're going to wholesalely forget all the sheathing or siding or something silly. Again, computerizing as much as you can on your inputs and outputs, having everyone basically estimate the same way. If it's computerized, it's pretty much done that way. But if you're doing some hand estimating, somebody might do work days, some person might do work hours, someone might do it in half days. So the order of events, we typically estimated from ground up, and also from, if you were taking out walls and stuff, basically in the order that it would be actually done in the field. So the order of events and the order of the estimate were the same. So it'd be pretty easy for us to come up with milestones where we want to get payments from our client, because we just add up all the things that happened to that point in hours and dollars, put our markup on, and say, okay, by the time we get to this point, we should be paid 60% of the project. So let's make our payments at this exact milestone of, say, pre-lath, where the inspectors come out. I'm going to have 60% of that job in the billing cycle, and if it's not paid in 5 days, we're gonna, we can walk. And you might even put that in your contract that you can walk. So again, this allows us to have anyone in the field come in to look at the pricing and also legitimize some of our assumptions. You might actually expect them to look over some field conditions. You'd also look at any hidden conditions there, either they run into with the age of house in this neighborhood. Any assumptions that they can do that will help you get the right price, and that they'll buy into the fact that, yeah, I can do it for that many hours and that much supervision. And again, as soon as we figure out these things are incorrect, we need to make sure our estimating systems reflect the new reality, and not we constantly having old material, old estimates and formulas being used. One thing I don't usually mention, but I added in this time, is don't be afraid to use variable markups. We mark up our labor 110%, our materials 56.35%, that's 50% plus tax, and our subs anywhere between 40 and 75%, depending on what they do and how easy it is for a client to find one. Plumbers are easy to find, electricians are easy to find, but there are certain folks, guys or gals that might do energy testing, or blower door work. That's not something they can, just look in the rare reminder or whatever your little paper is to figure out who they should hire. So the less they know about how things are priced, the more your opportunity is to raise that markup so that you're making a decent living. And again, the estimates aren't going to make you the money, but they will help you protect profits. I used to call the class I taught defensive estimating in honor of Bill Astle, who wrote a book of that same title. We really want to make sure that we are covering everything that can go wrong, and then a little bit more, because we know that Murphy's our partner. So I don't do estimates, sticks and bricks estimates, until I know I got the job. I don't need to know how many studs, how many sheets of plywood. I just need to know how many lineal feet a wall is, how tall the wall is, and I'll figure out the actual orders later on. I'm not wasting all my time figuring all that stuff out for the 40%, the 60% that don't choose us as contractor. And I hope you can find a way to also do that as well. Again, we're going to make sure we do our slippage and our pricing, which we've already talked about. We're going to figure out our slippages. And again, that slippage could be by crew, by job type, by weather, season, the level of plan detail, how flexible that plan is as we go forward, whatever level is practical. Anything that you can do to help identify places where you're going to falter and price accordingly is going to make you a lot more money in the long term. I'm not going to accept mediocrity. I know everyone says, oh, we're the best, we have really great people, blah, 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 right? So you need to hire the best to make that true, right? We want to make sure we treat them fairly so they don't run off and take clients with them, no doubt. Again, we also want to use products that align with our company philosophy. If you're very green, then you're going to want to get green products. If you're claiming you're using really only high quality products, you better make sure they're at least at the 50th percentile, or people are going to see them going in there going, yeah, I'm not getting what I'm paying for. I'm a Mercedes person, not a Kia. Yeah, Kia is a great car, but I want Mercedes level quality. And they expect Mercedes level pricing, which is part of the advantage of having them realize that, certain nameplates or brands may not be worth all they are, that their differential is, but it's worth it to them. And again, we want to make sure that you're choosing the best subcontractors and that they are held responsible to your job site rules. No parking on the grass, no loud music, no rap music, no holes in your jeans, no cracks showing, on and on and on. You want to make sure they also do their own cleanup, right? We want to make sure their RRP, their remodeling, remodeling, or whatever, and paint, the RRP rules. Because again, if they're not trained, we're going to have to train them before we even allow them on the site. And again, we have issues with premises protection, which is probably more important than fit or finish. We want to make sure the substreet warranty the same sense of urgency as our new work. Again, we're going to hire for attitude and train for skills. Well, you can't really change someone's attitude that's in their 25 to 35 range. They are who they are, right? And we want to make sure that everyone understands sort of our code of ethics, what our expectations are, our mission statement. They need to follow the procedures manual. They have to understand and cultivate our company culture. Again, and they should sign and accept any personnel manuals that you've created for time off and getting different benefits and perks, so that you have no one to argue about when they should have got it, how you're screwing them, all that kind of stuff. And the last thing we have to worry about, probably the most important thing that all this good stuff is going to do, is we hope that after overcharging them, as you might think I'm telling you to do, that we have a raving cheerleader when the job is complete. So key thing, I'm going to underpromise and overperform. So if you're overpromising, saying you're the best, blah, 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 it's kind of hard to overperform if you're claiming you're the best. So promises made must always be kept. So be careful what you say, what your salesperson says, what your field crew say about what you do or do not do. Because as I say so many times, the customer is always right. So if that's the case, make sure you set your expectations of the client's expectations at attainable levels. Make sure you can attain the level of expectation that you've set up for that client, or that you realize the client wants. And it may not be both clients, it might be just one, but that's all it takes. So sales calls are not a time or a place for lying, bait and switch, or any bragging. Remember that every one of your employees is basically in charge of customer relations. They're all salespeople. If those people are not treating folks properly, they're swearing on the job site, making lewd comments, they see you staring out the window at their 12-year-old daughters and friends in a pool, all those kinds of things, whether there's intentions bad or not, they're not going to go well with your clients. So make sure that they understand that their behavior reflects on the company, not just on themselves. And again, we want to make sure that our premises protection is such that you're not using your chairs as step stools, you're not using your tables as workbenches, putting down fresh drop cloths, runners, lots and lots of plastic, right? Dust walls everywhere. You never can claim that there'll be no dust. If you ever do that, you're an idiot, but there's always some dust, right? So make sure that you tell them there'll be a little bit of dust. We'll try to take care of it. As soon as you notice any, sometimes something gets ripped, or you go walking in there to look at stuff and don't realize you're like Pigpen, you're dragging stuff with you. And again, if you're doing a good job, be constantly asking for referrals. It would sure be nice if some of your friends got a chance to see what this is looking like. What do you think? Chat them over this weekend. Then make sure you do a really good cleanup on Friday afternoon. And we want to thank people for referrals, but I think that's kind of crass to give them money. A potted plant, actually, unless you're my wife, it probably will live for several years. If you give them, dinner and a movie, they probably have forgotten about it in a couple of days. I used to give out subscriptions to a cooking magazine for anyone that did a kitchen, and we have what do you call them? Coffee table books on certain things that we knew that the people were very interested in. Maybe it's like a book on Kauai or something like that. So personalizing your acts of kindness for people that are passing along people's names to you is a good idea, but try not to make it crass, and certainly try to make it as personal as you can. It goes a long, long way for them to feeling really good. Not just a magnet on the refrigerator to hold the kids' drawings and paintings. And again, we want to try to give people more knowledge rather than less, so they can make informed decisions. One of the things that I would suggest to you is pretend there's only 4 days in a week. Our scheduling was typically very, very good as far as what we told people we would start, where we get to these milestones, when we would finish, because we literally pretended there was 4 days in a week. I'm not sure how rainy it is in South Carolina, but I'm sure it's more rainy than it is where I live. Certainly not like being in Phoenix or someplace. So you've got days when you really can't work outside anyway, and you might be able to sneak some inside work. But having 4 days a week as the production time is a miracle way to have the schedule always be accurate. And scheduling is one of the things that creates the most complaints from our clients. And again, if you're gonna be more than 15 minutes late and you call, you'll be the only person in your local that's doing that. Again, we want to talk about their wise decision during the entire process. This is going to be a fabulous place for your family to gather. I can just see you now having a glass of wine, looking out over the backyard, see the pool, blah, blah, blah. Make sure that you let them know they're going to treat their friends well if they come over to visit, or if they'd like us to give them some free consulting on that first call. And again, we want to make sure that we actually tell people to call us before their warranty runs out. A lot of times we'd go back to do a little warranty touch up and they go, while we're here, the job came out so nice. We really like you to look at our bath. I mean, you did such a great job in the kitchen. I assume you do baths, right? So boom. You can even make adjustments and repairs 2, 3, 4 times after the warranty ends. Probably cost you $300-400. It's like an instant 10 people hear about it. And what would you cost for 10 people to hear about it? $3,000. So make sure that you leverage that. We're getting winding down here. I'm going to show you a couple spreadsheets, but before I do, I'm going to give you some final swing thoughts. Usually there's a picture of a golfer here, but I thought I would dispense with some of the ticky-tacky things that were in the original presentation. I want you to understand that you're done practicing. This is the real world. This is the stage that life occurs on. This is you're not out just hoping that you're learning something. If you've been in business 5 years, you've already gone to college as far as your business. You've had some good years, had some bad years. You learned a ton of stuff. You're now able to impress upon the people that you can do it, and you have enough skill sets to actually do it. So we're done practicing. We need to be paid because we know what we know, and we know what we shouldn't be doing and what they shouldn't be asking us for. One of the things I told the kids that I coached youth soccer travel team, we won the state championship as U14s and U16s. And one of the things that we impressed on the kids is if you think you can, you might. And if you think you can't, you're right. It's all about attitude. The people that have this like, oh, we're only down 3 scores, were the ones that, actually kept fighting. The ones who were down 3 scores that said, oh, there's no way we're going to win. Then the game turned into 6-0. So there's a lot of that goes on in business as well. And again, only your client can actually tell you that you're too expensive. And that doesn't occur when they say it. It's when they say, no, I'm not going to do it with you, and I'm not going to do it with anybody. Because otherwise it's your fault for not showing the value of your systems, your procedures, your folks, that they either chose to use someone else or again, they chose to do nothing at all, that you probably lost out to the stock market or private school or a river cruise in Europe. Not that you weren't professional and weren't giving them a good reason to spend their money, but not enough value at that point. Since I'm a man, I can say typically the problem in business is the man in the mirror. Man in the mirror is usually to blame. You need to learn to admit your mistakes. Don't pine over them. Apologize and move on. Just don't make the same mistakes over and over again. My father used to laugh and say, you can't live long enough to make all the mistakes over again. You got to learn to avoid them much quicker in your life, Alan. And again, one of the things that's obviously true is more companies die from indigestion than starvation. Indigestion being too busy, too stressed out, too spread out, mistakes are made, plans aren't updated, clients don't sign off on stuff, change orders are done without approval. All those kinds of things cost money. When you're starving, every calorie is looked at. Almost no one goes out of business because they have no business. They all go out of business going down at full speed ahead, but you're pointing into the water instead of out. And growth is more dangerous than revenue decline. Same sort of idea. You actually need cash to grow, right? There's a certain amount of money that has to be floating around to take care of those 2-month, 3-month lags between a job starting or a job gets canceled, or you got to buy some materials or some extra different kinds of tools to do a job. And without having that money, everything fails. So growth is more dangerous than revenue decline, because not only like calories, people look at every dollar when things are tight and don't spend a dollar that's not necessary. When you're growing, you see your checkbook growing, you think you're a genius. But eventually the money that you stole to buy all these things up ahead need to be paid back. And if you've got 7% slippage, now you're in trouble. Now you have a bigger pot of losses than you would have if you just stayed at your what I call small and smart level. There's only 3 ways to make another buck. You can either raise your price, you can either cut your costs, or you can do more work. And doing more work is the losing way to do it, because you're only earning like 25 cents on a dollar. Whereas if you raise a buck or drop a buck off the cost, it's a full buck. So with that, I'm gonna put the questions off for just a second, and I'm gonna pull up a couple of spreadsheets. So if you're pretty far back in the room, you might have trouble seeing this. Share my screen again. Okay, so this little puppy here is called the labor burden spreadsheet. And I'm going to point out some of the more important boxes. You'll have to take my word for it. But this is a production manager who makes, in the yellow box here, you see $36 an hour. And he works, or she works 2,080 hours a year, just 40 hours times 52 weeks. So 36 bucks an hour. The number here is 1896. That's how many billable hours we get, because we take all the brown things that are over on the left-hand side here for holidays, vacation, training, sick days, personal days, education, all those kinds of things. We take all those days of hours away. We don't get to bill for 2,080 hours. In this case, we're down to 1896. Now we're going to allow Mr. Production Manager some overtime hours. So the next box down in red shows 2,158 hours that we're paying him or her. And now we have to admit that there's some times where there's some change orders they were pricing out that we didn't get. There's travel in between 2 and 3 jobs during a day. Maybe they took some unpaid leave. Maybe they're cleaning out the truck. They're filling out time sheets. Whatever that is, it's not being billed to the client. So there's another 100 hours of that kind of miscellaneous stuff that's unbillable. So even a person working 2,100 or getting paid for 2,158 hours is only available to be billed at 1,874 hours. So what does that do to their actual costs? Well, let's look quickly at this list of things of benefits we see over here. We've got FICA, FUTA, federal unemployment, state unemployment, workers' comp, contractors liability, health and disability insurances. Then you got your vacation and holiday in brown. Then there's picnics and parties, tool and gas or vehicle costs, whether they own the vehicle or its company. Profit sharing, right? We got at least 3% there for any kind of good company to work for. There may be some non-performance bonuses. You might give folks some money at Christmas time to hope they stay till the next year. Got some sick personal meeting, training, education, computer, cell, internet, any oil repairs and insurances if you're paying a little bit of a stipend toward their personal vehicles, and clothing, cards, and tools. If you go over here, here's your 78 hours of overtime. Right here is the number in blue is 36,815 bucks. That's how much the perks are for this gentleman or lady. So the total now ends up being $110,000. We see that right there. 110,000 bucks is how much that person is literally costing us. That's their knapsack for a whole year is filled with $110,000 of IOUs that I got to try to have the clients pay me back on. So when we go through that math, that's 49%. Whoops, no, that's 49% of their base pay. The 50 cents on every dollar that we're paying in benefits. Some of them are valuable, some of them are payroll based. We can't do anything about them. Some are because we have to have insurance, right? We can't really get around too much of that. But when we look up here in these boxes below the $36, we see that their actual billable costs, just on using their regular hours with no overtime is $58.91. If we add overtime to it, it's $64.79 per hour. And if we take all the billable hours, including the overhead hours, it drops back down to $62.30. That's how much we really need to charge the clients so that they pay for all those benefits that add up to $110,000. If we just took the 50% labor burden that is actually occurring and multiplied it times the $36, we'd end up with about $53.70, which ends up over in this box way over there. So not $53.70, it's $58.91 on billable, $64.79 with overtime, and $62.30 among all hours that we are able to actually bill and recoup all those costs. So 36 goes to 62, that's probably it's $26 more. It's probably around 72 or 73% more. 72 or 3% of every dollar that we pay them ends up as a perk in billable time. So if we're going to mark this person up and put it in our estimate, we've got $62.30 is our starting point. That's our cost of goods sold. So if you're going to use 50%, you're charging around $95 an hour. If it was my company, we'd be using close to 90%, of about $125 an hour, $121 an hour, something along those lines. So that person better be cranking some business out for us, right? That person can't be sitting around not being productive, efficient, right? Taking care of the important, not just the urgent. We don't want him wasting his time putting out the same fires that are caused by the arsonists we call as employees. So that person has to be truly a mini you if you're the owner. So if we're marking up 50% across all of our material subs and labor, that's about a 33% margin. Certainly an honorable goal, but I'm pretty confident that you can charge more on labor because literally that's our OPEC suit that we have, that we can actually get a little bit more out of that. And with my last 3 minutes, let's look at this form. Does that show everybody? Somebody wave if it's up there. I don't see any waivers. Okay, thank you. So this is actually a percent complete report. It's an actual report from somebody that I know. I've sort of hidden what it's all about, but this actually allows us to track jobs as they are being performed by taking the percentage of costs incurred to date versus how much cost we know it's going to cost in total when the job is completed. So if you've got 60% of the final costs booked, and you've looked at that, you know, the amount that for the original estimate, you've added any costs that go for change orders and any Murphyisms, you've cut it twice as too short. So if that's 60%, then you can literally say, I've earned 60% of the final sale price. And if you do that for every job you have as it's ongoing, you're now tracking the scope of what's being expensed, which you can't much get around, to determine how much money you should have charged if you were to keep your original gross profit margin target. And if not, you see over on the far right in these greens and pinks, I guess they're pinks, is how much there has actually been some slippage in the original estimate to what was actually produced. And this sort of gray band across the top is projects that were completed in the first quarter, and some of them were left over from last year. And most of those margins were charged out to be like 25 to 23%, to 27%. And most of the projected gross profit are lower. One of them is actually negative. There's two here, they're actually negative gross profit. Those are horrendous things to have happen. If you think you're going to make 40 and you end up at minus 28, that's a huge, huge loss. So as you look down the bottom right corner here, there's been almost $136,000 of slippage, which represents 4.98% of the revenue that they did. So their original estimates were at 24.34, and they showed up at, they're going to show up at 19.36, and currently he's only billed out as if he could collect. And he's only got a gross profit of 17.45 because he's behind.
I
Yes.
think we're still seeing the labor burden sheet. I'm not seeing the sheet you're referring to.
Oh, thank you for breaking in. All right, stop share, and then we'll reshare. And we'll go to that. How's that?
Yes, that looks better.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, you're probably really confused. So anyway, here's the colors over on the right that indicate the slippage, either plus or minus. And there's the 4.98 that they've lost in slippage. It's $136,000. Original at 24, came in at 19.36. Current billings only show a gross profit of 17.45. So he's underbilled, as you can see from this green number way over here, of about 36,000 bucks. So if they were billing on a completion basis, he should have billed 36,000 more dollars. The key to this is it also acts as a cash flow analysis. So we know in this column right here, it says remaining dollars to complete. For all the jobs that are still in progress, there's $510,000 in a cost in cash that have to be spent to finish those jobs, including, again, change orders. We have $68,000, $681,000, almost $682,000 of cash still due on contracts that we haven't been able to bill for because we aren't at a properly either finished or at a milestone, leaving us with $171,000 of cash left over when all these jobs that are listed here are finished. So the next number in that sort of yellowy box says I have 26 number of weeks of overhead coverage that these jobs will cover. As I mentioned, we'd like to have 6 months of overhead coverage at all times. In this case, and this just happened to work out this way, he has 26 weeks, which is a half a year, of overhead coverage when these jobs finish out. So if he was able to finish these jobs out and incurring no other overhead other than was planned, he does have approximately 6 months of overhead coverage in the bank, so to speak, when these jobs finish, unless something catastrophic goes wrong, or the client fails to pay them, or they break a $4,000 slab of granite or something. So this is the device you use on a Friday afternoon to see where you stand at any given time against an accrual accounting system to see where your profit and losses are. It's a huge tool. It's a perfect way to be able to see into the future. No one who knows who Gene Dixon is. You have to be my age, I think. You have to be a tarot card reader to do any better than this. So that actually completes the presentation. I would certainly entertain any questions from the crowd. Again, if anyone would like either of these two forms or the discounting sheet that's embedded in the PowerPoint, or actually a copy of the PowerPoint, I'd be happy to provide
that. Alan, if you want to stop sharing your screen, we'll see if anybody has any questions. Here we go. Anybody have any questions for Alan? Or any comments or anything to add?
Why do you talk so fast?
You got it all in an hour and a half. I'm very impressed.
I would like for him to repeat in the slides, there's one statement he made, there's 3 ways to make an extra dollar and 2 of them are bad. I want to hear that part again.
Yeah, what was that again?
Only 2 of them make sense.
Right, that's the part I want to hear again.
Yeah, the two make sense are raising your price $1. That creates $1 of net profit. Or cutting down the cost of goods sold by $1, i.e. using a less expensive window or a less expensive grab bar. And both of those will give $1 to your bottom line automatically. To do another $1 of revenue, what you're going to get is 20 cents on $1. So what would you rather have, $1 or 20 cents? And again, in order to get $1 of savings or net profit using the volume, to get $1, you need to do $5 in revenue. So, a lot of people say, well, I can't raise my price. I'm the most expensive person in town. That is one of the biggest, I don't know how to put this. It's fake news. I can tell you from a personal standpoint that we are one of the most expensive people in town, but there's always going to be somebody that's charging more. In fact, people like, back in the day, you guys all remember Amray? AMRA was the largest remodeling company in the entire United States. They did a volume of $365 million doing Sears installed sales. That company went bankrupt. Can you imagine having 365 million flow through your company and you go bankrupt? What kind of pinheads are running that business? So they were not paying attention to the things that were important. And so almost anybody, no matter how much you raise your volume, you're still taking a big chance that you're just going to price yourself into a hole. And they were charging more than everybody. I used to love following the AMRA or the Sears salesmen around because they set the bar much higher than it had to be. So they were charging more and they still went bankrupt. So there's always a little bit of room. If you show value, why would Mercedes sell one car in America against Kia and Hyundai with 10-year, 100,000-mile warranties? Because people like to buy brands. They think that provides them with a level of confidence. If you're Mercedes Benz and you're in your local market, you can charge whatever you want, literally. How's that for an answer?
Good answer.
And by the way, I'm very opinionated.
We appreciate
figured it out.
You're not alone in that. You're in a good room for that, Alan.
Perfect.
Anybody got any other questions or anything else to add? Well, with that, Alan, we thank you very much.
I know I'm keeping you from the bar, so.
Feel free to crack a beer and join us, but I think we're going to move on and go have a drink. Alan, if you want to stick around, I'll put you on the straight on camera and people can come talk to you directly. Otherwise, if you could shoot me those spreadsheets, I'll make sure everybody gets them on my end.
Do you think people would like to have the PowerPoint?
Yes, I'm seeing some heads nodding. So yes, if you could send that, that'd be great. And I did record this as well, so we can always review it again.
Ooh, I should have been more careful about what I said.
You were fine. All right. Well, thank you, Alan. Great to see you again. And I hope to see you again real soon.
Hope to see you in person real soon.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Thanks, guys. Have a good evening.
Thank you.